Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Christensen. This is Horror 101 with Dr. AC, and this is Scare-a-thon 2023, benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. We're at the tail end of October, and we are going to be chatting about Huesera, the Bone Woman from Mexico. And I have an awesome panel tonight. Let's bring everybody in, and let's chat with Christiana Benedict and Katie Glidewell, aka the blonde in front, and Robin Graves beaming in from the Californias.
Yeah.
And again, we are talking about Huesera, the Bone Woman from 2022, directed by Michelle Garza Cervera. And I was looking up, this actually was nominated for multiple Mexican Oscars, the Ariels, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, and it won Best Screenplay. And Michelle Garza Cervera co-wrote the screenplay. We had this conversation recently, Christiana and I, about whether this is a horror film or not. This one certainly is.
This one
certainly
is
much more of a horror film. It's a slow burn, but it certainly has its horror moments. Robin, had you seen this film prior to it going on the list for October?
Yeah, I watched this one like as soon as it became available to me.
Okay.
I can't. I want to say it was our good buddy Josh over there that turned me on to this. He sent me the trailer, I think, and was like,
Okay.
"Whoa, what is this?" So as soon as that hit like VOD, I had some friends over and we bought it immediately.
Nice. And Katie, how about you?
Yes. I actually recorded something in July for what I consider the 3 best horror films of 2023. And this was one of the 3.
Okay.
I mean, I think, and this is, at least the first half of the year, I think this is definitely one of the stands out in so many categories.
Yep.
Quick
Well, the Ariels
sidebar,
are-
what were your other 2?
Yeah.
My other 2, I couldn't list one that was in July, but my other 2 were From Black and The Offering.
Oh, The Offering was great. I don't think I've heard of From Black, though. I got to check that out.
From Black is very much, it's kind of like Dark Song, but I felt it was different. And it definitely, you should check it out because I think the protagonist definitely was somewhat, it's definitely an anti-hero kind of protagonist. And it's Anna Camp, who's usually, she's in Pitch Perfect and all that stuff. So I really liked seeing her in like a different view and a different type of role that I haven't seen her in before. And I thought she did a great job.
Awesome.
Cool.
That list has now changed highly though. So.
And circling back around to this film, thanks, Robin, for taking us down.
I'm the king of a sidebar. Sorry.
I'm like, come on. Like we were like 5 minutes in. Christiana, where did you hear about this film for the first time?
I read about it last year, but I skipped it because my last horror binge was so packed, and I sort of hoarded it for this October.
Oh, awesome!
So I first saw it about 3 weeks ago, and then I watched it again today. So
great. Well,
in fact, I finished that showing about 25 minutes ago.
Oh,
so it's
fresh, yeah.
That's okay. Robin's usually like watching it while we're talking about it.
Very
okay,
fresh, like
fresh
20
in my
minutes
mind. Left on mine, so yeah, I rewatched it. Yeah.
So one fun fact, I mean, from the opening titles, I was in on this film, but it's from a production company called Machete Disruptiva, which I read as Disruptive Machete, and I'm kind of like, you know what, I'm in because what machete isn't disruptive? But this is from Mexico, and it kicks us off with Valeria and Raul, who are a couple who are trying to get pregnant, and they eventually succeed. But then she starts witnessing visions, or are the things really happening or not? And that's the kind of the debate that we go through. And because she's trying to tell people these things are happening, And kind of in theme with Watcher from that Katie and I talked about recently, it's kind of like nobody believes her.
Listen to the woman. Yeah.
Impossible. You know it can't be done.
Yeah, but she sees something transpire outside her window that basically haunts her throughout the rest of the movie. And whether it's reality or metaphorical, it is terrifying. And I like this movie a lot because I think it has a lot to say about a lot of different things. But let's go ahead and start off with, there's a lot of familial things going on there, starting with the fact that they are trying to start a family. But there are, there's her parents, and his mother particularly seems a little overbearing. She wants to buy them a crib that they don't necessarily want. She is a woodworker. She planned to make her own crib. And that's the other thing. Like Valeria, who is our main character, is very capable. She's clearly handy, fixing things and creating things. It's a really fun place to kind of start off with our main character.
Yeah, and it's almost like too fitting that we're doing this in support of like a reproductive health organization, and this whole thing hinges on like that sort of illusion of choice that like women are faced with, and it was really impactful. Like my friends and I, when we get together to watch a movie, we sit and have a couple drinks and we gab and we talk or whatever. And this one had everybody like stock silent the whole run through.
And I can't begin to speak to what the experience would be, to be a woman who is pregnant and wants to have a child and is struggling with both the being pregnant and then the aftermath of having the child and the postpartum. But I think all of that is front and center throughout. And anybody who can't get an inkling of what that's like, needs to take an empathy class.
Well, and I think it also says a lot about, you have Valeria's sister and she talks about that. It's like, look, you are like a leech on our parents. Like, you have these two kids. The only reason why like they're be able to do anything is because you're staying at our parents' house. And right. It's this whole thing, like, she wants to be a mom. Does she want to be a mom? The whole lifestyle she had before that she loved, and the creativity and the domestication, all that stuff. And then it seems like less than 10 years or 10 years after that, she's in the situation that she was rebelling against when she was a teenager. And I feel like, just all the things that are going through her mind and everything, it's like, is this me, or who am I? Like,
for sure.
Yeah. I thought it was a really cool kind of piece about identity in that way. And not even the, like, is this me? Who am I? Am I who I was 10 years ago? Even like past all of that, it's that way. Like, your decisions can just like get out of your control in no time. And that's like, Doc, where you point out like, oh, like she's wanting to have a kid and trying really hard. It's this like, oh, I'll get my words in a minute. But it's that thing of like, did she want to, or is she trying to like be something to like prove something to somebody, or to like, that's what you're supposed to do kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the way they like used that and illustrated it with a horrifying bone woman walking around the apartment was like a lot. That was very powerful stuff. She
literally is trading in her workshop to become the baby's room. And I thought that was an incredible metaphor there, that, this is something that we see her happy and smiling. There's another recurring image of the spider that keeps showing up. And I don't think that we ever got that spelled out for us. And in some ways I'm kind of excited by the fact that we didn't.
Well, the spider imagery goes into the crib too, because she has that wire pattern at the end of the crib, which is also
web.
like framed in one of my favorite shots in the film.
Yeah.
When she's deceived into opening the door, and then she goes around to check everything, and there's this one shot from inside the crib that's sort of handheld. It looks like a POV shot, and it's like looking through a spider's web at her, and I love that shot.
Yeah, that was really cool.
It was gorgeous.
And the whole thing is really a feast for the eyes. Like, all of it is so well staged and put together. And to go back a little bit, that moment she witnesses there, that like sort of sparks the turn for the rest of the movie, was haunting. Like, that was really heavy. And that was another one where we had to kind of pause and like gather ourselves.
What I love is that we have so many different elements of family. I mean, she has her sister, and her sister makes the comment, which I thought was telling, that you never want to play with my kids. Like, you never were like really part of their life. You weren't like the super aunt who was just dying to have her own kids. There's also her mother and father, but then there's the quote spinster aunt.
Yes.
Spinster. who's the coolest of the group, like she's the one that she connects with the most. And I thought that was interesting. I was like, man, there's so many wonderful layers. And then we kind of see a character, Octavia, which was someone with whom she had a relationship in her previous life. I also really love that flashback scene where we see the younger versions of Octavia and Valeria. That actress who played Valeria she's won a couple of Best Newcomer awards. It's also worth pointing out, this is Michelle Garza Cervera's first film. It's her feature debut. It's her feature debut, and it's such, as you said, Robin, such an assured film with such a clear vision to it. Everything is really just gorgeous to look at, and there's so much texture both in the screenplay and in the visuals and the sound design. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a hell of a way to debut. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I love about this film is that it starts with a thesis statement. I love films that like sort of summarize their entire arc in like their opening sequence, and in that opening sequence where you see the pilgrims going up the stairs to the massive golden virgin, is just like a summary of what the film portends, which is the struggle to get to motherhood, and whether or not it's actually worth the climb. Right. I love movies that start like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a lot like theater. Like when you do like a musical and the first song is like, here's what it's all about. Like, and I do like, that's, a little bit of a jab or whatever, but I do like it because it like it sets the mood, and it like sort of primes you for what you're about to get into.
Well, and the thing is, like, when that's done right, as I think it is done here, like when you have that opening song that you're like, I know where this story is going. I know the world I'm in. I understand kind of like, the entry point. Like, that's a magic thing. And I love a good opening song, and I love a good opening. Like what you said, Christiana, I was like watching that opening sequence. I'm like, I don't care what happens, I'm in, because that tracking back drone shot that reveals the generations, and then, the Virgin Mother, and you're like, okay,
yeah,
somebody has something to say, and I'm ready to hear it.
It was like really gracefully done. It's not like they Rogered their Hammersteins and were like, and she's the bone woman. Like they like really coast you into it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I love the use of the location too. I mean, it's sort of like, what Roger Corman did when he moved to Europe in the mid '60s. He said, "Okay, I've got all of this stuff lying around the countryside. Let's go out and make a movie out there." And yeah, it seems. I mean, I love that kind of opportunism among filmmakers.
I'll throw up the spoilers banner just so we can dig a little deeper, because I feel like this is one that we do have. I think it's going to serve anybody who's watching who has seen it to be able to talk about some of the details. There is that she gives birth, or no, it's even before she gives birth that she starts having her doubts, and she goes back and visits Octavia, and they have a tryst, and it's a question of like, what am I doing? You know, and I love the fact that we see her husband Raul, who is afraid to have sex with her, or is not into having sex with her in that moment because he either doesn't want to hurt the kid or he just thinks it's weird or whatever. Octavia has no problem with it. Octavia is in it to win it, and it's just like, I'm not afraid of you, and I'm not afraid of anything that's going on in your life right now.
And
he just accepts her wholly.
A tryst was a really elegant way to say steamy, lovingly rendered lesbian love scene. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm married to a man, and I was like, oh my God, they got it like that? Like,
yeah, no kidding.
Well, and I thought that was so important to show, because I mean, when you see the relationship between her and Raul, I mean, you can tell that they love each other, and she does love him, but it's like the first sex scene they have is very mechanical, and it's like, look, we are doing this to make a baby. That is
in service of,
yes. And then and then when they try it again, and he's like, oh, you know, I don't know. And I honestly, when I watched that this time again, I had to laugh, because I always love it whenever you see it's like, oh gosh, is that going to hurt the baby? I'm like, I'm sorry, how big do you think you are, sir? Like, I know that, like, good for you that you think that's
it's right there, though, right? It's the baby's like right there.
Yeah, how does this work? The American sex education failed me entirely.
And this is the reason that the guy that labeled Magnum condoms got a raise and became the VP of Trojan.
Exactly.
Well, it's I watched this with like a room full of gay men, and as soon as that like love scene with her and Octavia happens, we're all just like, leave him.
Yeah.
Leave him.
Well, and she has that feeling. She has that sense of, what have I done? Where am I supposed to be? But she's also not ready to commit fully to Octavia either. Like this is somebody who really is caught up in finding out what and who they want to be. Mm-hmm. And in the midst of that, there is this creepy, bone woman who is, I mean, it clearly feels a little J-horror inspired, but that doesn't mean it's not effective. And there's a scene where a woman, jumps from her balcony, lands on the road below, breaks both of her legs, but then looks up at her, from the street. And that specter will haunt her for the rest of the movie. And we keep hearing these twisting and snapping and breaking bone noises on the soundtrack. But we also see like people doing like these very strange contortions. And, I couldn't help but think that is her feeling like she is constantly being adjusted and manipulated, and that she is being kind of tortured by external forces. Christiana, you said something backstage. You said that huesera actually means bone setter.
It does, yeah.
As opposed to bone breaking. And it's like, the path of healing.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes you have to break bones to get them to set correctly, if you want to extend the metaphor.
Well, I mean, there is a pretty strong element of body horror in the breaking of bones, because the scene that, I mean, there's all sorts of scenes in this that should have trigger warnings accompanying them, but the one that really gets me, in part because I have a hand injury at the moment, is the one where she's cracking her fingers and she cracks her pointer finger back too far and snaps it, and I'm like, I mean, just on a visceral level, that the idea of a bone breaking spirit is just terrifying.
Yeah.
No, I was going to mention, it's like
regardless of whatever the allegorical meaning of that particular archetype is,
she inflicts on herself, like, and it just like amps up. It's like, ugh. which you don't see that in horror films, like how just cracking the knuckles like continuously and then amping it up to where you get to that point. It's like, I thought that, honestly, I thought that was a genius move. It's like, I never thought of like knuckles cracking being something that would be so much and so effective in a horror film. And it's like, this director did it so well.
It's right up there with the cuticle pull from, Black Swan.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was thinking that, or the way in Hereditary they made scary, it's the mark of like a really like well-intentioned thing to take, like, because I know a nervous tick of mine is to just crack my knuckles as much as they'll crack. So seeing that illustrated in there was a lot.
There's also an element of self-destructive is not the exact word, but the fact that she is smoking and trying to stop, but keeps leaning back to that, but also just kind of having the affair in the midst of her marital troubles, that also feels a little self-destructive rather than trying to confront the issue. It's an escape. That said, when I saw her with Octavia, like there's a sense of peace that was there. And I feel like that's not the answer. Like leaving Raul for Octavia is not the answer, but it was an opportunity for her to escape from the life that she had. And just watching her kind of have that moment of reprieve.
Yeah, it's that thing of like, you feel bad for Octavia because she like really clearly loves her to death.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she's just not, whether it's Raul or Octavia, she can't reciprocate that to like anybody.
Well, and it's like when she goes to her friend who kind of has that, gives her like a spiritual reading and talks about being the spider and all that stuff. When they do the flashback and she's with Octavia and they talk, what would have happened if my brother had survived. And it feels like that's like the web that she's in. Like she can't get at, like her web is her family and all these different things. And she just has to like finally let go, which she does at the end. Spoiler. Yeah. We've got the spoilers going. We got the spoilers. I know there's, I was like looking on IMDb and people were like, oh, this isn't a horror movie. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't enough tits and blood, so it's not a horror film.
Wait a minute. I mean, there's entire scenes that are nothing but tits.
Oh, let me rephrase.
And there's actual pussy eating in this film.
But that's scary for a male audience. That's scary because like, you mean I gotta do that now?
Yeah.
It's sad. But you heard it here, folks.
And scene. Speaking of which, yes,
monetized on YouTube, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of which, okay, where is this going? Yeah.
However, the horror. I mean, it kind of keeps building and building and building until she is in the forest at one point, having that kind of spirit journey. And what I find fascinating is like on Shudder, like it's just the synopsis for this movie is like, a group of witches, it proves to be the only hope for an expected mother. And I'm like, what? Like, because that doesn't happen until like the last, that's what it says on Shudder. Like the last 10 minutes is she goes to this group and they perform a ceremony and she finds herself in this kind of vision where she's in the forest and there's this tangle of broken, naked bodies that was as striking as anything I've ever seen in a horror film. And then they disentangle from each other, but they're still all broken and kind of like limping and kind of lurching along, and they surround her. I'm like, this is incredible. So anybody who doesn't think this is a horror film, like, I don't quite know what you need for it to be a horror film.
In the credits of the film, they describe all of those figures as the Huesera ballerinas.
Yeah, and that's so funny because I remember watching that for the first time and be like, "Oh my god, it's like a literal dance macabre!" Like,
yeah,
it is And it was so scary and so pretty. I love Shudder, but like they are really bad about splashing up a movie description, especially for like a really thoughtful, slow movie like that. But I can see why you would, for advertising purposes, really put a pin in that one, because that was like super evocative, and
that's the scene to stick
illustrates the point like really well.
Well, they debuted this film about the same time as they dropped the folk horror collection, and I think they were trying to take advantage of that by sort of shoehorning this film into that tradition. I don't think it really fits that tradition myself. I think it's more in the tradition of, say, well, I don't know, Latin American magical realism, you know, sort of Borges or Garcia or somebody like that. And I don't think it does the movie any good. And I think it's a little bit of bait and switch, which may very well explain why you have people complaining on the IMDb that it's not really a horror movie.
There's not enough English women in white gowns, and
where's the witches?
Effigy. Yeah.
I do want to really quick, just because we're coming toward the end here, but some of the incidents of after she's given birth and she's finding being a mom is not easy at all, and there were some chilling moments of. And I suspect, you know, many new mothers have that fantasy of, this child must stop crying. I need to rest. Yeah. And the way it's shot, you know, where we just see it through the phone, that the
baby monitor,
the baby monitor set up in the room. I was like, because I literally had to lean into my laptop. I'm like, holy, what's happening? What's happening? It's a great
that whole scene is just skin crawling.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and that scene goes on and on and on. You're like, where she wakes up and she doesn't know where the baby is, and you're like, oh, she knows what she might have done because she doesn't remember what she did.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that going on and on. I remember it being so good, it kind of took me out of the movie, because like me thinking about things as like somebody who's so into like the process of making a movie, where like it's happening and I'm like chewing my fingers off, and like as it goes on for so long, I just remember thinking like, wow, they're really good.
yeah they are I do want to
this is kind of the movie that I wish the Babadook had been.
Totally, because it plays with that same grief kind of thing, but in a less beating you over the head with the metaphor kind of way.
Yeah.
And our main actress, Natalia Solian, just such a powerhouse performance. I mean, she owns that film, and she shows so many facets of that character, and it's an incredible performance.
Yeah, she acted her ass off.
And I think she's surrounded by a great ensemble as well. But yeah, she is definitely the centerpiece.
And they do a really good job of like the subtlety of her makeup, like showing just when she's so tired and worn and like losing herself, just the little bit they have like around her eyes, and the way she's projects that, just like that blank stare. It's like, what am I doing? Who am I? And then immediately when it's like, it's going to be okay, it's like, great, all this. And then seeing the sonogram, the baby, it's like, what are you seeing? What are you seeing? And then it's like, okay, and then we're going to go back again. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that subtlety in the makeup, and, you know, there's like definitely that like Latin American film dramaticism in like the acting and the way it all plays out. But it also is like so committed to its reality that like there's a lot of times where you sort of lose that you're watching people act, and it's just so, everything from like the production, the direction, like the acting, everything is so expertly done that it's really, it boggles the mind.
Well, especially, I mean, this being the director's first feature, it's like, man, keep doing what you're doing.
And save some talent for the rest of us.
Don't be Toby Hooper and blowing everything on that first horror movie.
Hey, the Funhouse is pretty good. All right.
Yeah, it is. This is very much a finger in the eye of contemporary commercial horror movies in the United States, which basically prioritize the sanctity of the nuclear family over everything.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at like the remake of Poltergeist or the Possession or the Conjuring films or whatever, and this is like, no, that's actually a horrific situation for certain people, and this film is like this. This is the cage that you're talking about.
Yeah, it takes that thing.
I absolutely love that.
That it's like presented. It's just I'd not thought of that. You blew my mind just now, because through the 2010s, the most safe and sacred thing was like a traditional family unit, and this movie turning that into a monster is a stroke of genius.
Yeah,
and I know that you had mentioned, or when you had mentioned her sister saying you never held my kids. Coming from the fun aunts side of this, just because you can be the fun aunt doesn't. One of the things that's fun about it is that you give them back.
Yep.
So all those people that are like, "You're so good with kids," I am, and
from a distance.
Yeah, what I'm even better at? Sleeping when they're gone. So you have fun, keep making those babies, and I'll buy your wardrobes and have fun with them, and then I'll go home and do whatever I want.
Apropos of nothing, can you call this episode Donde Brujas?
Where are the witches? And I will say, I'm not going to throw the spoiler banner back up, but I thought the ending scene, the very ending scene, is one of the bravest things I've seen in any film, because you just don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was just an extraordinary, brave choice. It was like no, you can't do that, and she does it. And I thought that was just wonderful.
And it's absolutely the right thing for the movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
To hell with a test audience. Give me what you want.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, everybody. This is Scare-a-thon 2023. There is still time to donate to the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. The link to donate is below in the description of this video. We'll be wrapping things up fairly soon. Stay tuned. And until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.